Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're actually very excited today to have three people attending and talking in today's Scrum Pulse from New Zealand. So it's quite early for them. So we really appreciate you guys being on today. One of the things that was an update in the Scrum Guide in 2017 was about how Scrum has really expanded outside of the IT organization. So what's fantastic is today we have Vodafone and Radically here to talk about how Vodafone applied Agile outside of IT with Scrum. So Kacper, if you could just flick to the next slide, please. So just some quick guidelines before we get started. So your microphones are going to be muted throughout, but if you do have questions, please submit them. You can also tweet your questions to @scrum.org or #ScrumPulse. And if you're submitting those questions, you can see on the screen how you can put them into the webinar question box, and we'll be answering those. I'll actually be taking those at the end. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about Scrum.org. We're the home of Scrum. We're also a mission-based organization. We work to improve the profession of software delivery, and we do that through a lot of ways. The Scrum Pulse is actually one of those where we can share experiences and share information. So it's a free webinar. You can listen live, or you can listen to the recording, and also feel free to let us know what kind of themes you want to hear about or talk about. And the next slide, please. So I am actually going to let our presenters or ask our presenters to introduce themselves. But we do have today Leona Cheffins from Vodafone, Kacper Mazek, and Edwin Dando. They are bravely sharing their cameras at 6 in the morning, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm Patricia Kong from Scrum.org. Leona and Kacper are really going to share the implementation of Scrum outside of IT, and Edwin is going to be providing an interview kind of interactive mode with them. So with that, let's get started. Leona, could you give a brief introduction, please?
Sure, thank you. And good morning, everyone, from very early here in New Zealand. I'm Leona Cheffins. My background is in people change and people transformation. I've been working as a consultant for a number of years, and then 3 years ago, I joined Vodafone in an internal consulting role. Still focused on people change, and most recently I've changed to being an HR business partner, which means I get to bring my passion for people change, but also combine it with more of the generalist HR and people skills. And the portfolios I look after are our digital accelerator, our consumer business, and our finance business. And that's why we've really started applying Agile outside of the digital accelerator, and we'll talk more about that during this webcast. Kacper.
So hi everyone, I'm Kacper. I'm from Radically. I'm principal consultant at Radically. My background is strongly technical agile delivery, but for the last few years I'm trying to slowly move outside from technology and start to find a way how we can apply agile mindset and agile ways of working, including Scrum, in non-technical, non-IT teams. So this is the work that I'm exploring for the last year and a half. Using Agile in marketing teams, in the business teams, and recently in human resources. That will have a very, very quick touch point at the end of the presentation. Thanks. Edwin?
Hey everyone, my name's Edwin Dando. I'm a PST with Scrum.org, and I'm also the co-founder of Radically. I stumbled over Scrum trying to find better ways of working right back in 2002. And I think I became trainer number 8 at Scrum.org in 2010. And so I've had a long background in helping organizations apply agile thinking. And I'm really proud to see the work we've been doing today as agile starts to spread out of software and much more into giving awesome business results.
Excellent. So let's get started. Again, everyone, please feel free to submit any questions that you might have, but Edwin and Leona and Kacper are going to be engaging in conversation. So there will be a lot of questions that will come up, and then we'll try to answer throughout the presentation. So I'll turn it over to you,
Cool.
Kacper.
Thank you so much. So we'd like to start with why Agile in Vodafone. I'd like to maybe have Leona to give us a little bit overview of that.
Sure. So Agile has actually been used in Vodafone for quite a long time, but largely in our digital teams and quite a smaller environment, if you like. Anyone updating our app, anyone working on our website. More and about 12 months ago, Digital Vodafone became a stated strategy for the overall group, and we set up in New Zealand a digital accelerator, and I was the HR business partner for this. This was still about software development. But what we were seeing was really great results in terms of team engagement and in terms of some of the prioritization and the ways of working we could get out of the digital accelerator. So based on the group results and also the results that we were seeing here in New Zealand in that more technical environment, we started to wonder about whether or not we could try this in a business unit. Now, just by chance, not only was I the HR business partner for the Digital Accelerator, I was also the HR business partner for the Consumer Business Unit. And Kacper, if you go to the next slide, we had some number of challenges in the Consumer Business Unit. So Consumer Business Unit is that part of our business that looks after all of our products and propositions. They do all of our marketing. They're responsible for our retail stores and our terminals or device management and sales. So certainly not a traditional software environment, quite the opposite. And what we were seeing is that the engagement was quite low. We had quite a morale issue. And when we dug into that at the end of last year, we ran some sessions with the broader team and the leadership of the team. And the things they were telling us was that the decision making was either both too slow, and once we'd made a decision, we tended to change it. They didn't have visibility they wanted of what their priorities were, and they didn't feel it was aligned across the business unit. We had some talk of silo mentality, and the way that decisions got made or the way the work flowed through the function wasn't that clear for people. So as you can imagine, the sum of those things was not a particularly engaged business unit. Lots of great things were happening. We certainly weren't at a crisis, but based on the feedback of our team, this wasn't a situation that we wanted to continue. Looking at that list of things, and comparing to what we were achieving in our Digital Accelerator and elsewhere around the world with Agile, there's actually a reasonably good match. So what we thought was, well, why not try using some of the Agile mindset and Agile principles to change the way we were working in the consumer team. And that's when we engaged with the Radically team and took an approach around a kickoff with the team and some ongoing coaching, which I guess we can talk about.
So Leona, can you explain what did the challenges that you've just been through mean for Vodafone in terms of the way the business ran? What were the sort of business impacts of some of these challenges?
There are a lot of impacts to how we were showing up in market. One of those would be just the speed to getting to market. And another would be that we had a lot of things going on in market rather than a prioritized set of things going on in market. And I think that definitely had an impact on the business performance. It's hard, the telco market generally is a very challenging market. As you know, it's highly competitive. So it's a bit hard to separate the impact of what was going on in the market and the pressures there versus, what were our internal challenges. But certainly the speed we were going to market and the prioritization for our team so they knew what to focus on in market, I think weren't supporting our success.
So sort of busy doing busy work.
Yeah.
Cool. So when we met with Leona, we discussed about we wanted to phrase those problems into or challenges to problem statement. So we came with a problem statement like how might the consumer business unit improve engagement and delivery by adopting agile ways of working to win in the market. So that was our problem statement that we wanted to focus on and try to solve, help Leona and consumer business unit to solve. And we always start initially each of our engagements, we were trying to understand what's the problem and what's the whole environment around. And we quickly knew that to start applying agile in consumer, we knew that we need to focus on two areas. So one area was actually take those business cross-functional squads, which are prepaid team that's looking after all the prepaid mobile prepaid market on account. So again, mobile on account or post-pay market, as well as broadband. So the teams, we wanted to create cross-functional teams that will be fully responsible for those three products and areas of the market. And as Leona said, it does include people from marketing, brand to customer value management and finance people, and creating cross-functional teams that will be able to make decisions very quickly and rapidly how to deliver the change. But also we knew that to make it successful, it's really critical for us to engage with the leadership team. So consumer leadership team, because most of the decisions were made by them about how the business should look like, and they needed to be consulted for every single decision. So we knew that they are big stakeholders of those three teams, and we need to take them on the journey in the same way as the squads. So we really wanted to, we thought about what kind of tools and practices and frameworks we can use for that. So we selected a few of those that we want to start embedding. First of all is growth mindset. Quite often we are saying that Agile is a mindset. We wanted to make it more real and tangible. So we use growth mindset as a baseline for all the work that we are doing in consumer. We needed to agree on a few guiding principles because Agile Software Manifesto is focused on the software, and those teams are not so much software teams. So we really wanted to find what kind of other values we can give them to grow in and be better at. Agile Fluency model is the model that we look at about if we want to really focus to get really good results quickly, what are the next steps? It's just a guiding framework that helps us where to focus. I'm going to talk about that briefly soon. And as a core, we said that the principle is we want to have those self-organized teams that are going to make decisions, and we want to use the Scrum as a framework to help them manage the work and manage the environment around them to deliver better. So maybe I will start with the Agile Fluency model. So as you can see that Agile Fluency model is a model that suggests if you are going to do any Agile change, it's one of the different models. I suggest to focus you on different areas. And the first focus is on shifting the team culture. We might think about how we can improve technology, skills, or tools. But what this model suggests is we should really focus on the culture and shifting the culture from focusing on individual tasks or individual types of the activities to focusing on the outcomes that will drive the business results and the customer outcomes, and create the whole team ownership over the results instead of being, let's say, as a marketing person, being responsible for only part of the whole product. So what we've done to make it happen is first of all we wanted to really create a vision and the purpose for the team, why those teams exist, and we wanted to really reset them what those teams want to achieve, and really started to shaping them, moving away from me as a person. I'm here to do let's say some analysis of our customers' behaviors, to my goal is to deliver the great experience for my customer. Even if I'm not customer experience specialist, this is going to be my really day job, but skills I'm bringing is very, very different. I understand more data, or I'm more marketing specialist. It's just slowly moving the shift and aligning the whole team around what we want to achieve and what's our goals. In this model, we can find information that it takes usually 3 to 6 months to get there. I think we are able to really shift the culture of the team and start changing the focus from individual tasks to the business outcomes in like 3 to 4 months. So it was really, really great. And it gave us really fast, really good results over how the team was thinking and how the team was operating.
So Kacper, you're an experienced Agile coach. You've worked in a lot of different places. Why do you think it was important to start with team culture first, as opposed to sort of our traditional model, which would be, often skills first?
It's because if you look even at different studies done all over the world about one of the biggest challenge to adopt Agile, and there are usually two things. First thing is the culture, and second thing is the leadership. So we really wanted to focus less on being great at practices, both Agile practices and improving our skills. We really wanted to tackle the biggest risk and the biggest impediment first. So that's why we took on board the leadership, because they were key to help us changing the culture. And actually start me as a coach, I was really focusing on how I can build high-performing culture by building much higher level of trust and alignment, and but also balancing that with the autonomy. And it was the work that we were doing with the leadership team, how we can give more autonomy to the teams so we can actually get self-organized teams. Does that make sense, Edwin?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Cool. So after as I said, the key way of thinking that we wanted to use was the growth mindset. So the growth mindset is coming from studies done by Carol Dweck. She's a psychologist on Stanford University. And growth mindset, the idea of the growth mindset talks about, as a humans, the people, we want to be open to the fact that our abilities are not fixed, and we are not given with what we have. We can actually develop our abilities. And she's using those studies mostly to help us understand how kids can raise, how individuals can grow. But what's interesting is that applying the same mindset in the business context, in the corporate context, can really change a lot of individual behaviors, and is especially in the leadership. If we'll ask leaders to start to apply growth mindset with their teams, we might see how the teams and individuals are going to start to be more enabled to take or risk or try new stuff or get out from the typical comfort zones or the typical day-to-day areas. When I was talking earlier about building these cross-functional teams and changing the focus from I'm an expert in this domain, in this function, to now I want to focus on the outcomes for the customer, it does require to do stuff differently, or sometimes do the things which are not your main expertise, and it does require growth and open mindset to do that. That's why it was really important for us to, together with the leaders and the teams, building the mindset. So really, one thing that we found that is really important for us as a key success factor is actually setting up for success. We knew that if we want to make quick change, fast change, we want to really deliver to the problem statement that we agreed. We need to really prepare or maybe reset the team and the environment a little bit. So we always start with education, and the whole education is focused on Agile mindset and the growth mindset, what it can mean in the workplace, what does it mean in our everyday behaviors, and we go through different activities with the teams that will help them to explore different ways of thinking. As part of those workshops at the beginning, we are trying to, with the whole team, engaging everyone who's going to be part of the team, to run a session when we are understanding what are the key impediments for adopting the change, to allow the Agile mindset and Agile ways of working, to allow them to implement inside the teams and the business units. So this backlog helps us to understand of the impediments, helps us to understand what are the challenges for us as a coaches, where do we need to put our focus on. Then we spent a few hours creating the backlog. Again, it's a way of building really strong ownership of those teams, ownership of the results, ownership of the work, not just being focused on one very narrow functional area, but fully understanding what we're going to achieve for the next couple of weeks or months. And then first step towards the self-organization, we actually co-create the work environment with the squads. We create how the visual management board will look like. We even take the Scrum as a whole framework. We decompose that to each of the parts, and we say how it will look like for us, how we want to do planning, when do we want to have retrospective, and so on and so on. So it's really giving all the tools and frameworks to the team, and with giving them support, we are deciding together how our work environment will look like. It helps very, very strongly with commitment and very strongly with ownership of the environment.
So
what was
Kacper,
important?
sorry, can you maybe explain a little bit? So as I understand it, you've developed the growth mindset. You've talked about the growth mindset. You've then asked for all the impediments that you could potentially see in the business that might be stopping you achieving that mindset. And then you've run some workshops here and co-created this visual working space and how things are going to work. Through that process, can you talk, how did you notice the way of thinking and the interaction between the people change?
Oh yeah, of course. Way of thinking, interaction, how they changed. I saw it was really, really amazing, especially looking at maybe the first days and then after a couple of days and towards the end. We had, and I think what this process done, this process unlocked a lot of hidden potential in the people. We had people that they were great people, they were great what they were doing, but the way how they were interacting with others was more like order takings. So they were given order, they were given a task, and they were just executing that. When suddenly we started to giving them equal voice, and they started to have great ideas about not only about their expertise, but about the whole customer journey, or the how we might solve the problem, the business problems. It's really bringing this safe environment was it's key for growing the both agile mindset, growth mindset, and growing the organized teams. That's why our work with the leaders was important. We were helping them to give them tools and the way how to interact with it, in explaining the way how is the best way to interact with the teams, to create a kind of mindset of not a mindset, but a safe environment, to be more self-organized. Yep.
Maybe I can add to that as well, Kacper. So those first 2 days, there was a couple of interesting things that happened, particularly in relation to the growth mindset. What we did was we had the consumer leadership team join at the end of the 2 days. So at that point, what the teams had done is they'd had some training and skills-based development, so they understood what the frameworks were and practices, but they'd also spent time producing their own product backlog and applying those things to their work that was specific to their team or their squad. When the leadership team joined, 2 interesting things happened. One, it was 2 days' work, so it wasn't a completed, polished, final product. And that was quite uncomfortable for our teams at first, because they're used to presenting a finished, polished, final product. And it was very interesting to observe how that went and how that went for everybody. And actually it was fine, but it did require myself and Kacper jumping in a couple of times just to remind everybody this wasn't a finished, polished product. This was a work in progress. And then the second thing that happened was, even though the teams had obviously been through the same training and they'd achieved the same results in terms of having a product backlog, the way they had applied the structures and the frameworks varied by squad. Everyone's brain works slightly differently. So the coloured post-it notes they'd used, the way they'd structured their thoughts, it was different for each team. And again, the leadership team went, well, shouldn't we have a consistent approach? They should all look the same, which would be completely counter to empowering the teams to organise their work in the way that they needed to organise them. So again, that was, this was just day 2, an hour wrap-up session, and there were already things which were going to be quite different for both the leadership team and the teams themselves.
Cool. Thanks,
yeah,
Leona.
thanks. Yeah, totally. On this point, that the backlog and the board and visual, the environment of those teams, each of the team went to different direction. And it was really great because what was happening after a couple, because those three teams, they were not sitting next to each other. So what was happening after a couple of weeks, they started to talk to each other how they are solving different problems in a different way, and they started to learn from each other. So again, being more open and growing, having growth mindset, it's just a starting point, and that's the beginning of the journey. Cool. Applying Agile in consumer using Scrum. So we knew that to get to be successful, we need to have some framework that will help us to work. So we wanted to use Scrum framework as it's widely used framework both in Vodafone but also by us when we engage with different clients. So we took each of those aspects of the framework, and we started on those workshops, started building the product backlog. It was big visual management board stating the different areas of focus and going from the more details upfront to the less details product backlog items in the future. We started to, of course, apply sprint planning. Our sprint cycle is 2 weeks, so every fortnight the teams are meeting together and they are looking at what they want to do for the next 2 weeks. And what is really important here, that those teams are very business focused, and the conversations that they are having on the sprint planning, they always start with the current market situation. They all talk about what's happening on the market. They look at what kind of changes different competitors done recently. What are the numbers, different business numbers that are important to make different decisions, and they are prioritizing or reprioritizing even in-flight initiatives based on the current numbers and based, of course, on the feedback that they are getting from consumer leadership team. So it's very interesting for me also to learn and work in this environment, how those teams and those people think differently. And what's amazing is that the people, as I said earlier, people that were just focusing on sometimes executing the tasks, suddenly they stepped in and they have a really good and valid conversation about the business and what the business wants to do and what the business wants to achieve in the next couple of sprints. So of course, an output of the planning is sprint backlog. The team is creating a plan of how work is going to be delivered. We are setting up goal for each sprint, but quite often we are not setting up individual goal, but different goals for different initiatives. As the team is not developing single product, they need to maintain a lot of different business initiatives. So they are setting up goals for each of those main initiatives that they are going to work on during the sprint. At the end, we are wrapping up each sprint with the review, where the whole consumer leadership team and quite often we have different execs attending and other managers and leaders from other teams as well. It's a great session, collaborative session, when they actually talk about what they achieved. They give updates about the market, how we are performing, how, let's say, campaign or changes that they've done in the last couple of sprints, how they are performing, what kind of business results they are driving. So again, by doing those activities, sprint planning and sprint review with very strong business focus, we are embedding the culture of focusing on the business results instead of focusing on the delivery. Making sure that whole team is aware of the business context and the whole team talks using the same language, and this whole team is focused on achieving that instead of focusing on just delivering more stuff. After that, we always have sprint retrospective when the team, this time is closed meeting, typical retrospective. We have always team discuss what they can do differently, what can they do better. So this is the cycle of the team. Of course, daily Scrum every day for 15 minutes, first thing in the morning. It was quite interesting as different teams started to experiment with how to run daily Scrum. Yeah, it was very interesting, and they started to attend each other daily scrums as well to learn from each other. We of course have the role of the product owner. That's for each of the teams. It's a profit and loss person that is responsible for success of the product in the market, and that person is leading the team, the whole team. We have people that I was acting as a Scrum Master for the first couple of sprints for those squads, for those teams. And but then we started to identify who inside the team is actually a good fit to take over and take some of those responsibilities. And my focus started to be growing that person instead of acting there as a Scrum Master for the whole period of time. So that's how we use the Scrum framework, and it was really the teams really like it. And what I need to say, I remember I think it was sprint 5 or sprint 6 when the team started to share with me saying things like, Kacper, what's happening? Like it was very exciting and different at the beginning, but now it becomes to feel like a normal thing. Are we going to drop down, or are we going to slow down, or do we feel that we are more successful and productive just because of the excitement, or like how this kind of way of working will look like in a couple of months? So I was laughing when they were asking me those questions, and my only feedback was that I encourage them to focus on sprint retrospectives and finding small things that they can do better every single sprint. And now after a couple of months, I can see how it's becoming a normal thing. It's a routine for them to work in this way, but they are really they're really keeping the discipline because they see huge value in following each of the events and actually making sure that those events will happen, and they will get the outcomes from those.
Kacper, I'm just conscious of time, and I can see we've got a lot of great questions coming in, so we might just need to press on.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Edwin. Yeah, I have a few slides, but they are very quick ones. So just here is one of the photos of the collaborative space. It's a sprint review with the leadership team. We have a few executives here and the team presenting the work. And the comment here is that they can see really good results after a few days of working in this way. After starting working with the teams, we after the kickoff, my biggest part or biggest involvement was about the coaching. We have collocated squads. We have the product owner vision with strong vision, and we are helping the POs to prioritize, how to provide estimates, and understand the value of each of the work stream. I talk about mostly of those stuff about growing the ownership and surfacing impediments. And the impediments part was really important because together with the consumer leadership team, we were meeting every week on an impediment meeting. So consumer leadership team, we engaged with them. We had a half-day workshop called Agile for Executives, just to give them understanding of what Agile is and what it means for them. And we got information from the CLT, consumer leadership team, that they're open to hear feedback. And so what we decided to do is to have weekly impediments meeting where me and 3 team Scrum Masters were talking for 30 minutes each week with the consumer leadership team about what kind of impediments they have. So it was both focused on short-term delivery and long-term impediments. And we really wanted to, this was the way how we were engaging very strongly and closely with the consumer leadership team. And I think I just wanted to tell a quick story about one powerful thing that happened during that is the team was talking a lot that it takes ages to take decisions and to take, maybe not ages, but weeks and days to take to get feedback from leaders and to get some agreement of the direction. So what the team discussed with the leaders, or what actually leaders proposed, that they proposed that every day between 9 and 10 a.m., except Wednesdays, they are going to sit in a collaborative space and be totally open to have any questions and any discussion with the teams. And the teams call that power hour, because it was the 1 hour during each day where they could get a lot of feedback and they could make a lot of quick decisions. It was one of the key things that enables the team to go really, really fast and respond to the market. One of the feedback that we got from the consumer leadership team is that they really see that the prioritization in the action, and they were really enjoying that by focusing on the less items, it was enabling the team to actually deliver things faster and make real changes on the market much faster, which is critical for highly competitive environment. So yeah, then we after a couple of months we started to see a few results, and I wanted to get Leona to talk about those.
So there's some quotes here on the slides, but two sort of overall points where I was amazed how quickly we started to get positive feedback from the teams in terms of their engagement and how they were feeling about the work. This was it was quite a big call to do this in a not software environment in quite a different way, and I wasn't sure if the impact would be as great, and actually it was, and I was quite surprised how quickly and how significant the impact was and how the teams felt about their work and their daily environment. And then the second thing, in terms of results, we saw a really significant change in our pulse survey results. So our people engagement surveys run annually, but we do a mid-year pulse survey, and that pulse survey was run about 3.5 months into this process, and we saw an 11-point increase in the statement around prioritization, and we saw a 9-point increase in the statement around team collaboration. And those two metrics didn't reflect across the whole organisation. That was specific to the consumer area, and the difference was the agile work. So we definitely saw a numerical impact on our pulse survey results as a result of this, and those numerical results are just backed up by the verbatims that we were getting from the teams. If you go to the last one, Kacper, oh yeah, this one. I think when someone said there's a lot less emails, that was quite a moment, because firstly it got a big laugh, but secondly the CLT went, well, if this is going to give me less emails, I am in. This is something that is genuinely making a difference. And emails, it's such a silly thing, isn't it? But it was a really big representation of the fact that people were talking to each other more, the stand-ups were working, the engagement was there, rather than people taking days, using a hierarchy, using email. So again, just a sort of a symbolic difference that was backed up by the numbers in our pulse survey. That's not to say everything was shiny and rosy all the time. So I think the next slide is on challenges before we get some questions coming. Go one more. So maybe I'll talk to the first one. So the squads bumped up against, I guess, the traditional parts of the business, and quite quickly I was getting requests like, well, can't we have all the technology people in the squads as well, so that we're all working the same way and we can all feel the benefits? And of course, from an HR and a people perspective, I was like, yes, absolutely, that sounds like a great idea. But if you examine it more closely, that would have just moved the blocker, because a lot of the blocker was getting technology, changes to our technology platforms. And unfortunately, our platforms at this stage are not set up for working this way. So even if we had the people in the squads, we would just have a different impediment. It would be about our technology enablement. So today we still have this challenge. We're still bumping up against where we're not set up in the organisation to work in Agile, either because of the people set up or more normally actually because of our technology setup, which we're working on and will be fixed, but we're not there yet. Kacper, do you want to pick up the others?
Yeah, sure. So so in the Scrum framework, one of the concepts is to find a way how we can create shippable increment each sprint. And it was very tough to achieve that in those business units, because it depends on the type of the project or the types of the change that they are working on. Sometimes it was about releasing maybe a new campaign, or what one of the teams started to be really, really great about, that was not happening or not even possible earlier on, is that every sprint they were changing at least one thing on the deals. Deals is a kind of offering that prepaid customer at Vodafone has. So every week they got, or every 2 weeks they got like a special different deals that they can use. Like sometimes it's free or very low cost, extra bonus things, and they were not changing often. And even if they were changing, the results or the impact on the customer and the business was not clear and not well understood. But now, by putting the cross-functional teams, they were actually able to iterate and change those deals from week to week or from sprint to sprint, but also measure the business impact and the customer impact on those. So it was very, very one short and tangible examples how it helped them to work in a more like iterative way. But there's a lot of initiatives that the team couldn't find a way how they can deliver shippable increment each sprint. Those initiatives were much more complex. They required wider business to be engaged, to involve. But also those initiatives are quite often just big, and it was very hard. So that's one of the things and the learnings from doing that. And sometimes the ability to deliver was limited by the teams downstream, the teams that are responsible for maybe embedding and deploying the change in the branches, in the stores, or let's say marketing campaign that needs to go live in the TV and radio and so on and so on. So they had those limitations there and constraints that we needed to work with. And now, based on the results that we could see after a couple of months, other parts of the business are joining the journey. And there's a lot of requests coming to Leona about starting to adopting the Agile in other areas. And we actually started to do the work with the HR, with the human resources. And we are 2-3 months in the journey. And our main framework there is using Scrum combined with the Kanban. But there are other areas that are willing to start, like enterprise and network. Does it make sense, Leona?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So this is where Vodafone is at the journey with Agile and using Scrum outside of IT. I recommend to reach out to me if you are interested to know more. You can email me or find me on the LinkedIn. And I think we are about to start Q&A.
Good job. Good job ending on time, but also good job with just this transition, and thank you for sharing this story. We have so many good questions coming in. Leona, I was wondering, one of the conversations that this presentation started with was about the transition, right? So you talked about the transition from the organizational structure. So as you even start to look at human resources, enterprise network, how do you see, is there a new organizational structure? Is it very, very different than what you had before at Vodafone?
It's not, in our context, it's not very, very different. For me, structure just needs to enable what you're trying to achieve. So we were trying to achieve a new way of working, and we wanted to do that via Agile with squads. We did have to do a small structural change just to make sure that there was a clear product owner for each, but we haven't done anything more than that. Longer term, bigger picture, I think maybe there will be bigger structural changes just to make sure that the thing I think we're missing from a structure perspective at the moment is sort of the people support and practice leadership, so that people are getting their skills developed within their squads. But in this scenario, no, we didn't have to make a significant structural change. It already enabled what we were trying to achieve.
Excellent. So a follow-up on that, and that would be, one of the questions here is really about the notion of when you're forming into Scrum teams, was there a specific, so that didn't change really the reporting structure then, right? So it's not like the product owner is the manager of whoever's doing the work in the team, in the development team level, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the interesting things here. If I contrast what we did in consumer with what we were doing in the digital accelerator, the squads we formed there or thereabouts were existing teams. They were people who had worked together before, so they did have personal working relationships. The way they were working was significantly different, but they were a group of people who had interacted in a work and teaming sense before. So that wasn't something we needed to develop. We didn't need to go through a forming, norming, storming type thing for the teams. When we did it in the digital accelerator, they were brand new teams. They hadn't really worked together before. So that was a slightly different change journey. Because they needed to build those personal relationships as well.
Okay, thank you. So here's another question, and Edwin, I think this might be a good one for you, and then please, Kacper, chime in. So one of the questions, Edwin, that we get asked often, maybe in trainings, is how do people free up enough time to participate in the meetings in Scrum, right? So we have to think about those events. We're adding additional meetings. How do you, Edwin, talk about that? But then also, Kacper and Leona, what kind of feedback did you get when you started to say, hey, these are the events we're going to participate, here are the rules, when people start to think about how do I even have enough time to start to do that?
Yeah, and it's a common one that we often get in training, and people go, oh, all the meetings in Agile, all the meetings in Scrum. If you look at what the meetings are designed to do, they're actually a very, very concentrated and powerful use of time. In essence, we're going to get together and plan out the work we're going to do for the next burst. We're going to get together daily for 15 minutes and assess the plan, and does our plan need to change? Then at the end, we're going to get together and say, how did everything go and what was the result we delivered? And then we're going to have a meeting to be able to figure out what to improve. So if you look at those key meetings, what they actually do is free up time, because we get everyone together, we concentrate very intensely on achieving those things, and by having everyone together and able to collaborate, it in essence frees up time that would normally be spent one-to-one or on emails or all the other types of communication that we often use by default in a business. So it's there's a little bit of a sacrifice around the me type behavior, what I want as a person, to much more about we type behavior, where as a group, let's do what's more efficient for us, which is to get together, collaborate, get clear on what we're trying to achieve, and then get out. So it's really about a shift in mindset around this sort of one-to-one communication to more group collaboration.
Great. What kind of feedback did you guys get? Any pushback at Vodafone?
I wouldn't say on the meetings within the squads, the stand-ups and the retrospectives and so on. Where we had some challenge really was making sure that the meetings worked for the leadership team, and actually it ended up being quite a symbolic change and a really demonstration of people wanting it to be different, because the leadership team had met for half a day weekly forever, and instead of doing that now we have our sprint reviews. So the leadership team actually gets up, they don't have that meeting, and they visit the boards and the teams in their spaces, and instead of one or two people coming to this very formal meeting room, now the whole team engages with the leadership team. So for the leadership team, the meetings slotted into the same times in their diary with the same amount of time, but they're a lot more effective in terms of building engagement with the teams and getting lots of input.
Can I piggyback off of that? So was there's another question really around the culture and leadership. Was there any resistance from leadership? And you talked about how they love seeing the results and all the streamlining, but what about in terms of, I would say in the teams and in leadership, that notion that there could be a loss of control from management, from leadership? This is saying, hey, we're gonna hands off a little bit. So did you guys face anything there that you'd like to share?
I think there's two types of resistance. The first was, we don't really understand this, and we're launching into this without knowing exactly how it's going to work. because we decided to just start and try it and see what would happen, rather than having lots of PowerPoint slides defining exactly how it was going to work. So that was the first set of resistance. And then the second set of resistance is really important, which was sort of your second point around some of our people leaders who've previously led teams in of a group of people who have a particular skill set, and they review all their work and started to ask questions like, well, what's my role in the organization? Is there still value? And of course there is. We need those people to help develop the skills of the people in the squads. We need those people as product owners. We really value them and need them, but their role was changing, and that was quite hard for people. We had to address that in a couple of sessions and lots of ongoing discussion.
And is that through retrospectives or just through open conversation?
That was open conversation, particularly at the start, as we were kicking things off. As we've gone on and people have got a better idea of how it's working for us, people have understood it more and therefore are less worried.
Mm-hmm. Can we just get some clarification questions? So we have some clarification questions coming in. So they're asking, specifically when we're talking about now, and I think some people logged in late, what was the main area that you're talking about now? And you said you want to move this into human resources, I think enterprise and network. What were you using as the product for this story that you're sharing now?
So the business unit we're talking about at the moment is our consumer business unit. So they deliver everything for our consumer customers as opposed to our business customers. And the types of outcomes and teams that are in there is our marketing team. So they produce all of our campaigns. Our what we call CVM, which is the team that looks after our existing customers. Our product teams who define our product and turn those into propositions with pricing. What am I missing? Oh, and our terminals team. So terminals is just our word for devices. So people who engage with Apple and Samsung to sell.
Maybe to make it real, what those teams actually were delivering. Let's say they are working now on what kind of Christmas campaign they're going to run over the Christmas, what kind of discounts, devices, promotions they're going to launch. If they want to provide new phone, what kind of phone is going to be, what's the pricing, and so on and so on. If, let's say, competition is giving new pricing offer, how they're going to respond to that. Recently, they launched unlimited plan, so everyone at Vodafone can sign up for the unlimited data. So they were thinking about what's the pricing structure, how to make it tangible, real, how to advertise it, what kind of message we want to send to the market. So they really make business decision about how our store will look like, to what kind of pricing we want to use, what kind of campaign, what do we want to sell, what do we want to offer to our customers, what kind of deals, how we will bring more people in, what kind of value we can provide them. So they're very, very balancing act of short-term focus, what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks on the market, to what we are planning to do over the next year or 2 years with our brand, and in what kind of direction we want to do. So they really are the top engine of everything that is happening in the wider organization. They drive the marketing, technology decisions, and different things. So they are making business decisions for those key products from Vodafone.
Okay. Thank you for just clarifying that. This is a really excellent question, and I'm just going to throw it in just to see what happens. So how did you approach saying this is what our culture is now? How did you assess that, or did you assess it? Right, you talked about the fact that there was this lower speed to market that was identified as an issue, and then was there an assessment of where you aspired to be as a culture, or was it just something needs to change and so we're going to try Agile? How did the story actually start?
I better answer that one because that was before Kacper was involved. We had actually, based on our people survey results last year, we kicked off a series of sessions with the team to try and understand more, because as I mentioned, the engagement scores were lower than we would have liked them to be, and that was showing up in the results in market as well. The culmination of that was a workshop where, and I've still got some of the pictures, where the teams actually drew some quite amazing artwork that demonstrated where the culture is today, or was back then, and also some pictures of where they'd like it to be. And they became quite, there's a ship which became quite symbolic of describing where we were and how we wanted to be. And it was at that point we were not talking about Agile. At that point we were talking about our engagement and our people and how we were feeling and how we were working. And it was based on those pictures of what we would like our future state to be that we then compared to what we were achieving with Agile elsewhere. And that was how the linkage of the two things came to be. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So when you guys were looking then at saying, hey, okay, these are the steps that we're going to take, we really want to talk about, the future of what our business is. And then, we were talking about, you've been talking about the agile mindset or a different mindset that has now become the way that you currently work. How did you guys, and Kacper, this might be a good one for you to think about, how did you actually combine the different, let's say, processes, different frameworks, because you talk about squads, you talk about teams, you talk about Scrum. How did you guys figure out how to combine that and what would work for you?
How we figured out, I think we have I'm trying to explore Agile outside of IT for the last year and a half. And I've done a few things in different marketing teams earlier before Vodafone, and I started to see what are the challenges that they have and how they are similar to the software world and software challenges that I've seen in organizations before. And I just, by looking at those different the similarities and differences, I tried to figure out what I can do actually to help them and how I need to change subtle things. Let's say instead of using the agile software principles to what I'm using often the modern agile principles that talks about making people and us customers awesome, making safety a prerequisite, experimenting and learning rapidly, as well as delivering value continuously. So using those 4 key principles and trying to think how I can grow team in each of those, how I can enable them to experiment more, and then thinking what actually I can do to make it happen. And Scrum is a great fit for that because it provides structure of we want to work in a short iterations, short sprints when we plan something and reflect at the end. There is retrospective as a core part of finding a way of improvement. And what I'm doing, I'm always having encouraging teams to put on the Scrum board, on the team board, like experimentation backlog. What are the experiments they want to learn, just to again grow the mindset of it's okay to try. It's now we are calling that only experiment. Let's give it a go, see what will happen, make sure that everyone around, including leaders, are okay that we might fail, and yes, slowly putting those parts in the practice. But also
Okay.
what I said at the beginning, I'm involving a lot the team in making those decisions.
Excellent. So we are rounding up on time. I'm going to try to do this in 30 seconds, and then we need to wrap this up. We have a record of your questions. For those of you, I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but we'll try to figure out how we can respond to you directly or not. But we can always try to see if there's future sessions or something that we can direct those towards. So quick question. A lot of these questions are really around culture and leadership. Is your leadership all in New Zealand? Is your leadership all in the same place? And if not, how did you deal with that? And I'm sorry, I'm only going to give you 30 seconds to answer that, any of you.
It's a quick one. The leadership for this particular change is all in New Zealand, and in fact, we're all in Auckland in one city. Vodafone's global, but that's not the leadership that was involved in this particular change.
Oh, so we could really see the problems of a global distributed leadership team. Edwin, maybe 10 seconds. If you had a globally distributed leadership team for this type of initiative, maybe what's one suggestion you would give to our listeners today?
The key suggestion is principles. If I look at the work that Kacper's done, and I've been popping in and visiting and keeping on top of this, it's relaxing the sort of very process-driven approach that we would traditionally take to, well, the market has traditionally taken to Agile, to much more around a set of principles and values, and to really engage the people in ownership around those values. So we're always looking at improving, but we reflect back onto the values and principles that Kacper's brought out of either modern Agile and Agile Fluency, the Scrum values. It really is back to how we want to work as a group.
All right. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to encourage you to keep on chatting with us in the forums. We do have these webcasts that are coming up. We have about one every month and videos that you can rewatch. And we do have a blog. So any of these questions that we're not getting to, please keep in touch with us in that way. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much. Scrum on. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you, Vodafone and Radically.
Thank you.
Thank you.